Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today we're going to be doing another follow-up on the Ask Youngblood Anything video, and just kind of getting you some answers on the questions that you've had. And again, I'll probably let this run for about 15 minutes or so, and then kind of have another episode coming out shortly. But the first question on this video is going to be from Stanford Swanson, saying, "Hey STL, they posted more about pets, their role in the universe, and what range of pets we may see." Stanford, as you kind of mentioned in your question, it's really a non-essential part of the game. So there hasn't been a whole lot that's been released. I don't expect to get information on it anytime in the foreseeable future. I think the closest that we're probably going to get to it, especially when we start talking about actually getting into the universe with pets, is going to be the promised fish tank in the Starfarer. So if you're okay with aquatic pets, then I think it's going to happen relatively soon. But if you're talking about actually having your Labrador Retriever jumping up in your co-pilot's chair and flying around the universe, I think we're going to be waiting a very long time for that. As far as their role in the universe, maybe there's some, unexpected benefits, like your morale ends up being higher, or maybe they help to keep you awake longer, where you can go longer without having to actually sleep. There may be some mechanics actually built into the game to have a benefit surrounding that. But if I had to venture a guess, I would say it's purely a cosmetic, just kind of fun thing to have. What's to differentiate you from another character that looks just like you? Well, maybe your chocolate lab that's walking right next to you is going to be that deciding factor. So I think that's kind of what we're going to see out of them. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot to it, but it'll be interesting to see, because it's something I haven't really seen anything like that in a game like this. DKMan717 says, when do you think the hangar model of the Car2All will be released or available? I think we're surprisingly close to that. I would be shocked if we don't have it in the hangar by the end of February. I'm hoping for sooner, because it's one of those ships that I really, really want to go see. But just following the trends and kind of the release of information and the speed at which they're generating new content, I get the feeling, based on others that we've seen, that we're close, probably about a month out. And saying shocked that I would be shocked is probably a little bit extreme, because honestly I wouldn't. There's a lot of things that they're working to develop, and anything Squadron 42 gets priority right now. And I'm not sure if the Car2All is going to have real priority, based on I'm not sure if it's going to be included in the campaign. So I would say I think it's probably by end of February, but that's just quantified by my own kind of empirical evidence. That's not really tied to anything that I've heard or read, so fingers crossed on that. The Bald Vapor says, really enjoy your videos, thank you. The highly anticipated Reliance currently are listed with 2 TR1 engines. What's your thought on that? For me, it's going to be interesting to see how that actually ends up performing. I kind of get the expectation that we would probably come with 2 TR2s, but there's a lot of other factors that are going to go into that. I don't look at this ship and say, oh wow, this thing's going to be a racer, but in a way, you think of a ship like the Mako, especially with a name like Mako, one of the fastest fish in the sea, you would think that it needs to be relatively fast, or if you just look at it from a gameplay perspective, the ability to keep up with other ships to film footage. I mean, we even got a teaser of him filming a race. I would expect it needs to be relatively fast. So my gut reaction says that number is going to increase a little bit. But we do see some of the more alien-type tech ships, kind of like the Xi'an, the Car2All. It's got articulated maneuvering thrusters. So maybe in a ship like the Reliant that has some of that alien technology on board, maybe we have some of the maneuvering thrusters that are actually moving into different directions to help propel you forward faster. There may be more to it than we're really seeing on the cover. Now, I don't expect this thing to be a racer by any means, but I think it does need to be relatively fast, and I think they'll probably figure out a way to make that happen. Daniel Kessler says he's new to Star Citizen, played over 100 hours in Elite, and I feel like the controls in Star Citizen are not as good as Elite. I can't pinpoint exactly why. What do you think? First off, nobody flame the guy. It's okay to like Elite. I like Elite. There's a lot of us that like a bunch of different games, so let's not go fanboy here. Daniel, I think the controls themselves aren't that different, at least for me on the HOTAS setup. You can customize either to be what you like, but if you're referring to the way that ships handle, they're just drastically different. I think Elite tries to go for the big, lumbering, slow, you've got a lot of inertia, it's hard to stop type of gameplay. I also get the impression that ships tend to be a little bit bigger in Elite, but I can't really back that up either. Star Citizen seems to be a little bit, I don't want to say arcadey, because that's definitely not the right word for it, but Star Citizen is definitely more kind of twitch, action oriented. Everything happens fast, and you have to be really, really careful with the way you control. I don't necessarily like one better than the other. I think maybe I prefer the Star Citizen one a little bit better, just because sometimes I wanted the ships in Elite to do a little bit more than they did. But they're just so different in their flight models that it's really hard to say, compare them apples to apples, because they go about them in very different ways. Elementalism says, what do you think about docking a bunch of ships together and creating an improvised space station, or just landing them somewhere on a procedural generated planet, like having a Caterpillar for a hub, a Crucible for repairs, a Merchantman for commerce, and an Endeavor for production? Will it be viable, profitable? How do you think it could go, etc., etc.? Okay, so do I think it's technically possible to do something like this? Yes. All the ships are going to be capable of docking together, so theoretically having them there for an extended period of time seems feasible. I don't know if there's time frames that are going to be associated with things like docking collars. Like maybe they don't do well if they're exposed to the elements for too long. I don't know how that's all going to work. I would assume that you could, for as long as you wanted to, keep all those ships together. But there's other things to keep in mind, like what happens if somebody logs off, and what are the log-off mechanics for the ships? How long does it stay there? Does all of a sudden your hub of the Caterpillar disappear? I think the bigger issue here is that when all of your ships are locked together, you're already at a pretty good disadvantage. Because if somebody decides to come attack, you may have a bunch of ships there. You may have a boatload of them, but if it takes a while to decouple and end up getting into the fight while you're just sitting there taking a pounding, all kind of clumped together, and who knows what damage you're doing to each other, it's kind of a dangerous situation. I think it would almost just make more sense for you to have almost like a convoy that travels together, because I don't think there's a whole lot of advantage to having them together where people can just walk from one to the other to the other. You could always just dock your ship with one, then dock your ship with another, or something to that extent. So I think it could be profitable. If there's demand, if you've got a place that everybody wants to go because they could get something done there that they can't get done anywhere else, the money's going to find you. That's how it works in the game. I don't envision it being a real good opportunity. It might be interesting, but having, 40 ships that are all lined up and connected through docking collars, I think there's only so much value in doing something like that. And then you get into other factors like how many docking collars do certain ships have? How do you get it all lined up and formatted? Landing on a planet would probably be a better option, which you did mention, than actually just connecting in space. But you also asked, do I think that we'll ever see large economic hubs made by and run by players? Yes, I absolutely do think so. And there's been some talk by CIG about like player-owned and run space stations and eventually like bases and those types of things. So I think that gameplay mechanic is coming. I think it's just a little bit farther off. And it'll be interesting to see how much that actually gets kind of fleshed out and how detailed that ends up being. Spaceface3122 says, Mark Hamill, is he or is he not your father? Mark Hamill is not my father. My dad talks a little bit more than Mark. But seriously, are you from the St. Louis area? Given the STL in your name, I'm from the area and have been trying to get the word out about Star Citizen. Thanks for the content. I am from St. Louis. I'm in the southern portion of St. Louis County. I've been here since about 1993. And funny enough you say that, I've recently been hearing, and this was maybe a month or two ago, but it's been on my mind. Somebody was talking about like a St. Louis Star Citizen meetup. So if somebody organized something like that, it could be entertaining. But keep spreading the good word. More people is better. Lucas says, have you been playing RTS games, real-time strategy? And if yes, what have you, and do you recommend any? I like strategy games. It's a genre of game that I really enjoy playing. Here's the catch. I never play them. I just don't find the time. For me, I work a lot of hours. I try and spend time with my wife and my dogs. We're in the adoption phase. So my gaming time is much less than a lot of people. And then when you add to that time that I try to do, YouTube and make good content, the amount of time that I get to play games is fairly limited. So when I play, I typically try and really focus on the games that I'm also doing for content. So like Star Citizen, I try and play a lot of Star Citizen. Rocket League is just one of those games that I play a lot of because it is a stupid amount of fun. But yeah, I don't really play real-time strategy, though I was really big into the Warcraft and Starcraft scenes for a while, and as well as some of the others. But for me, it's normally shooters or flight sim type games. D. Genzer says, hey Youngblood, love the videos, especially the system tours. Wants to know if I've heard anything about IFF, identify friend or foe, systems used by the UEE naval or civilian vessels. Kind of a long question, but the overall gist of it is, what are we going to see in ships to be able to identify friendlies and enemies? Now, there's going to be a couple different things in your ship that I think are going to help you kind of accomplish what you're looking for here. Org mates are probably going to automatically be, I would say, probably green. You know, the people that are known to be friendlies are probably going to be green or blue or some kind of positive sounding color. But I would imagine you get a separate color for organization mates or people that you're currently partied up with. You know, you don't necessarily need to be org mates to be that, but you know, your wingmen should probably get a unique color identifier. People will probably start out, you know, white or yellow or some neutral color like that. If you don't know if they're friendly or not, you know, and then once, you know, you could probably tag them as friendly and their color changes, or perhaps, you know, they shoot you and it automatically changes. You know, hostiles are definitely going to be red or orange or something like that. And then maybe there's like an official, you know, official color. So like if the UEE or the police comes by, you know, they've got a unique identifier as well. There's been talks about having that in there, and it may even be reflective based on the reputation system that they've talked about implementing as well. You know, if somebody's got a really crappy reputation for being, you know, a pirate, or somebody that's kind of a troll and harasses other players, or somebody that takes money to do contracts but then doesn't complete them, that may end up having an impact. Ultimately, what I think it's probably going to be, outside of the immediate ones like known enemies or known friendlies, you probably will see a ship in a neutral color. You can check out their reputation system, and then you decide how you want to tag them. You know, you flip it over one way or the other and get the color that you want. Captain Lawn Gnome says, I've been subbed to you since early PS2 days. Thanks, glad to have you around. Loved it when your first Star Citizen video came in my sub box. Been wondering about the future of your channel. Do you see yourself playing Star Citizen after the game releases? And if so, what kind of content could you see yourself making? Yes. For me, for a lot of people, and ultimately this is what people should be doing, but in order to make good content, you need to have some passion about what you're trying to do. You can fake your way through it for a while, but to make as many Star Citizen videos as I've made at this point, you have to be passionate about it. And Star Citizen is one of those games that I am thrilled is coming out, and I cannot wait. I mean, this is the type of game that I've wanted ever since playing Wing Commander and X-Wing and all those other sims back in the day. So I am absolutely jazzed for this game to come out, and watching the development is a really interesting process. So I am absolutely going to be playing Star Citizen after release, and there's going to be a lot of content from me after release. I would say maybe we do things like showcasing how to find good trade routes, or how to run effective, you know, like more, like right now there's a lot of speculation, but once we get more development, that's when we can start getting into more like tips, guides, tutorials, those types of things, as well as just some funny or interesting combat videos, or just stuff that happens in the verse. There's a lot to do out there, and that includes things like ship loadout videos. What's the best way to kit out a certain ship in this certain type of role? Brian Murphy says, can you break down various flight styles that pilots are using in weapon loadouts? Well, with this, the most common one that we see right now is really, well, there's really two that are very common. There's going to be kind of the standard jousting approach to fighting, and then there's going to be the circle strafe fights. And those are the ones that we see the most of, you know. And for jousting, it's when both players go head on, they fly away, and then come back and do it all over again. And then there's other ones where the circle strafe, where basically you guys are head to head and you're kind of rotating around each other. As far as the weapon loadouts go, that's very, very, very specific to the ships. So maybe I'll start doing some loadout videos for you guys the more I get to play with them. But that's kind of hard to answer right here. Other flight styles, you know, especially with ships like the Redeemer or the Vanguard making their way in, we're starting to see a little bit more boom and zoom. And some of that's also just a function of having the persistent universe and the different flight modes that are in there right now. So, like, using the Vanguard, coming in and in cruise, lining up your shot, going into SCM mode, doing a lot of damage, bumping back into cruise and zooming off at a speed which no one else can catch you. That's going to be a really effective fighting style, especially against bigger ships. So there's going to be different things that kind of start to develop, but for now, those are kind of the primary ones that we really see. Rogue Gaming says, "Hi Youngblood, just wondering what ships could make good small capital ships like the Caterpillar or the 890, or do you know anything about the new Corvette coming out?" I know nothing about the new Corvette coming out. I wish I got the inside track and could get that for you guys, but unfortunately I'm just another citizen in CIG's eyes. As far as pseudo-capital ships, I think the 890 is a really good one that you mentioned there. I think that it's got a lot of things that it's got going for it. It's got the little snub nose. It's got, it's big enough to kind of host people on board. It's got some good sensor arrays. I think a really, really good kind of sub-capital ship is going to be the Carrack. It's got a lot of sensors. It's got a lot of options. It's military class. It's got the good kind of... what do you call it? The kind of hologram display, so you can really manage a battlefield. I did a video a while back called "Picking the Right Capital Ship," I think, or it was something like that. I'll see if I can find it and put it in the description for you. But I do think, it's command and control ship. So watch those, because anything that I put in there could kind of fit the bill, but I think the 890 and the Carrack are the two that really stand out to me. Caterpillar could do it. We just don't know enough about the Cat right now to really say, confidently that, yeah, it's going to be really good at that role, because I kind of have some doubts. And it's much smaller than most people think of it. Now, you don't need to have a big ship to be a capital ship, but it's kind of an important quality. The Caterpillar is actually about the size of like a Retaliator or a Constellation, and it's actually a little bit smaller than that, I think. It's not as big as everybody thinks it is. And then Kratos, for the last question, says, "Can we have your voice control profile? Are they going to implement the radar UI on the Freelancer?" I am happy to share whatever I book with you guys. Here's the problem, though. I haven't updated my voice attack profile in a very long time, so the controls would be very, very bad. That being said, I do plan on playing with it a little bit more. I'm looking forward to kind of coordinating some things through voice, some things through the rocket power grid, some things in-game. So once I get that all kind of worked out for you, absolutely I'll release that to everybody. And then as far as the UI on the Freelancer, they've got some stuff to do with the user interfaces that need some work. The Freelancer and the Vanguard are the two that need probably the most attention right now. The radar's wonky. Some of them don't let you change between the different, control schemes, or doesn't let you actually go to shield management or power management. There's work that needs to be done on the interface, and seeing how they're going to do that's going to be interesting. The Freelancer seems to be just like a functional piece that needs to be adjusted, whereas the Vanguard seems to be more like a real design challenge, because they made the screen so small that they almost need to implement a heads-up display on your helmet to really kind of supplement what you're seeing below. That would probably be the easy fix, so you're not actually going through a redesign. Other than that, if they get track IR support working and you're actually able to kind of lean in and look at it a little bit more, then maybe its current iteration is fine. But then again, not everybody's going to have track IR, so who knows? So that's it. I wanted to make this 15 minutes. I guess I took a couple too many extra questions. So we're closer to 20. Don't forget, if you have questions, feel free to get them in. I'm happy to answer them. I'm probably about 2 or 3 videos delayed now, though, just based on the sheer number of questions. So you're not going to be forgotten. Get them in. I'll get to them at some point. Otherwise, I appreciate you guys watching these, because I really like making them. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.